All right, so are you ready to dive into the world of Jeff Mills? I mean, we are talking about a techno legend here.
Absolutely. I've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. And we've got this awesome Red Bull Music Academy interview to unpack. And let me tell you, it gets deep. We're not just talking about music theory here. This is about a whole philosophy.
Yeah, from what I've heard, Mills is all about pushing boundaries. Like,
hmm
he's not afraid to challenge the norms.
Oh, totally. And that comes through loud and clear in this interview. He holds nothing back. Like, he talks about the not so glamorous side of touring.
Yeah, the stuff most people don't see.
Exactly. He actually talks about having to wash his clothes in hotel sinks.
Wow.
Yeah, because he'd be on the road for 6 weeks straight. It's a good thing he's passionate about what he does.
That's an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
But it shows you the kind of dedication it takes to reach that level of artistry. It's not all glitz and glamour.
No kidding. And this dedication really shines through in his approach to DJing. He talks about reading the crowd. It's not just about following a set list. It's about creating an experience, a journey.
Right. It's like he's composing in real time, responding to the energy of the room.
Exactly. He talks about how he used to dig through his records for those with multiple great tracks just so he could play them more than once in a set. Can you imagine? Back in the days of vinyl?
It's incredible. Talk about meticulous planning. He had to have this whole sonic landscape mapped out in his head.
Mm,
And with vinyl, you're limited to what you can physically carry.
totally. And that actually reminds me, he talks about his early days in radio and how he had to play super short clips to fit more music into his shows. I mean, talk about pressure.
Wow, no kidding. That kind of experience would force you to make every second count.
Exactly. And you can hear that in his DJ sets this ability to create these intricate sonic tapestries, these really tight transitions and builds. It's amazing.
Yeah, like every sound has a purpose.
Totally. Now let's talk about Detroit. I mean, his account of the Detroit techno scene is just pure gold. He paints this picture of this city that's like a melting pot of creativity, fueled by everything from disco to industrial music.
It's fascinating how he connects those influences. Like those sounds were the building blocks of something completely new.
Right. And he talks about how radio DJs had so much freedom back then. Can you imagine that today? They were given free rein to experiment.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
they were shaping the sound of a generation with basically no restrictions.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how different the music landscape would be today if artists had that same level of creative autonomy.
Right. It's like they were given the keys to the airwaves and told, go create. And they did. Mills talks about experimenting with live instruments on air, pushing the boundaries of what was possible with just two turntables and a mixer.
It's incredible. And it wasn't just about the music, it was about taking a stand. And that's where the underground resistance movement comes in.
Oh yeah, the UR. They were a force to be reckoned with.
Totally.
Yeah.
He talks about how major labels were trying to push artists like Kevin Saunderson towards a more commercial sound.
Right. They wanted to package it and sell it.
Exactly. And Mills and his collaborators were like, nope, not having it. They were drawing a line in the sand.
It was about preserving the soul of techno, even if it meant sacrificing mainstream success. It was a true act of rebellion.
Absolutely. They believed in the power of their music and its message and its ability to bring people together, and they weren't going to compromise that.
It was about more than just making money. It was about making a statement.
Exactly. Now get ready for this because his take on minimalism blew my mind. He's not just talking about stripping things back musically, he's talking about a whole language.
Yeah, he sees it as a way to communicate directly with the listener's subconscious. And it's not just in his music. He even applies it to his album art.
I know, right? He talks about the degree of darkness on a record sleeve and how it sets the tone for the music. He's creating a whole experience before you even drop the needle.
It's like he's curating a vibe, drawing you into his world.
Exactly. And then there's the music itself. The grooves, the textures. He uses silence as a tool.
He's not afraid of a little discomfort either.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, he seems to embrace it. He talks about how those grooves, those sounds, can create a sense of unease, and that's okay. It's about pushing the listener outside their comfort zone.
Because that's where the magic happens, right? It's where we really start to pay attention. He actually says that frustration with a genre is what fuels innovation.
That's so true. When everyone's making the same sounds, it takes guts to break free and explore something new.
And he's all about breaking free. Like you said, it's actually necessary for us to get disgusted with something to be able to move on to the next.
It's about pushing past the familiar, pushing past those boundaries to discover something truly original.
And that's what he does. He pushes boundaries like it's nobody's business. Speaking of pushing boundaries, hold on to your hats because this man has some wild ideas about the future of music.
Oh, here we go.
We're talking virtual reality raves, AI DJs that can mix like specific artists.
Okay, now that's next level.
Right. It's like he's living in 3023. But seriously, I think it speaks volumes about his willingness to embrace the unknown, to imagine what music could be.
He's not just thinking outside the box, he's like building a whole new box. It's that kind of forward thinking that pushes the boundaries of art and technology.
Exactly. And even if some of his ideas never come to pass, it's that willingness to dream big that's so inspiring.
It reminds us that anything is possible, especially in the world of music. It's like he's saying, why limit ourselves to like clubs and concert halls? Like, what if music could like transport us anywhere?
It's funny you should say that. He actually talks about transforming abandoned buildings in Detroit into these underground clubs.
Cool.
Yeah, so he was already doing this kind of thing, turning limitations into opportunities. And now he's talking about virtual spaces and AI DJs. It's like he's always looking for the next evolution in how we experience music.
Right. Like pushing past the physical limitations of space and even like human performers. And let's not forget, he lived through a time when like genre barriers felt insurmountable. Yet here he is talking about a future where those lines are blurred.
Yeah, it's all about breaking down those walls. It makes you wonder what will be the defining sound of our generation and how will it shatter expectations?
Right. Like, are we even going to have genres anymore? Or will it be something completely different?
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about Mills's creative process for a second, because he gets really philosophical about this idea of whether music is something you create or something that flows through you.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Like, are we in control or are we just channels?
Right. And he seems to land somewhere in between. He talks about the importance of intentionality, like having a clear vision before you even touch an instrument or a piece of equipment.
So it's not just about random sounds. There's a purpose behind it.
Exactly. He actually says, you always think about what you're doing. Otherwise, you wouldn't turn on your equipment. You just leave it there. But then there's the other side he talks about, that element of discovery, those happy accidents that happen when you're in the flow.
Oh, yeah, those moments when something unexpected happens and it just clicks.
Yes. And he's a master of harnessing those accidents. He talks about like dissecting tracks, piecing them back together, experimenting with equipment in ways it wasn't intended to be used. It's like he's bending the tools to his will.
It's that combination of technical skill and like almost like a playful experimentation that's so cool.
Totally. And you know what else I found fascinating? His perspective on frustration. He doesn't shy away from it. He embraces it. He even says that being disgusted with a genre can fuel innovation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's like that feeling of restlessness, of wanting to break free from the mold that pushes artists to explore new territory. He uses the example of the minimal sound in techno. Some people found it repetitive, but for others, it was a blank canvas.
Right. Like a challenge to create something new within those constraints.
Exactly. It's like saying sometimes you have to be pushed to the point of discomfort in order to discover something groundbreaking.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing when a sound has become too predictable and having the audacity to say, we can do better.
He actually says, it's actually necessary for us to get disgusted with something to be able to move on to the next.
Wow. That's a powerful statement.
Right. And it speaks to his relentless drive to evolve. Now, one story that really stuck with me was about the making of the X-102 album with Underground Resistance. He had this vivid dream about Saturn and its rings, and it sparked this whole concept for the record.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So he's inspired by his dreams too.
Right. But it's more than just inspiration. He and his collaborators actually dove deep into researching the names and compositions of Saturn's rings. They incorporated those elements into the music.
So it's like a concept album, but on a whole other level.
Totally. Like they created a sonic representation of a celestial body. It's mind-blowing.
It's like he's blurring the lines between art and science.
Exactly. And he even talks about the record label itself being an integral part of the experience. The hole in the center representing the planet, the groove spiraling inwards like a cosmic pathway. It's incredible.
It's like he considers every single detail, creating this holistic experience for the listener.
Exactly. And that's something he carries over into his DJ sets, too, that meticulous attention to detail. It's not just about playing tracks, it's about curating a journey. He's like a conductor leading an orchestra, but his instruments are turntables and drum machines.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's like he's orchestrating a whole sonic experience.
Right, he's not just a DJ, he's a sonic architect, a storyteller. But with all this talk about pushing boundaries, I have to wonder, what does he think about the boundaries we put on music with genre labels?
That's a good question. Does he even subscribe to those categories?
Right. And it's interesting because he brings up Basic Channel, a group that completely defied categorization. They were a blend of techno, house, dub, all these different elements swirling together. And he seems to appreciate that willingness to operate outside the confines of genre.
So it's not about fitting into a box. It's about expressing yourself freely.
Exactly. And he talks about how back in the day, record stores would have these whole sections dedicated to Detroit techno, and now those lines are becoming increasingly blurred.
Which I think is a good thing. It allows for more freedom of expression, more opportunities for artists to experiment.
He says, in the end, it doesn't really matter what you call it. What matters is the feeling it evokes, the connection it creates.
That's what it's all about.
Now, on a more personal note, one of the most revealing parts of the interview is when Mills talks about the toll touring takes on his personal life.
Mhm.
He's incredibly open about the sacrifices he's had to make.
It's something we don't often hear about, that other side of the music industry.
Right. We see the glamour, but we don't always see the sacrifices.
It's a different kind of pressure.
And he's brutally honest about it. He even mentions trying to quit touring 7 times.
Wow, 7 times. That's a lot.
It shows you the internal conflict he's dealing with, that pull of his passion versus the yearning for a more grounded existence.
Right, like trying to find that balance between your art and your personal life.
Exactly. When does the dream start to outweigh the cost? It's a tough question. And it's something he's clearly still wrestling with. He talks about looking forward to a time when he can dedicate more time to his family, maybe even focus on mentoring the next generation of artists.
That's beautiful. It's like he's thinking about his legacy, but not just in terms of his music.
Exactly. And it's a good reminder that even those who seem to have it all figured out still crave those human connections, those moments of normalcy. It makes you realize that there's always more to the story. It's like we get this glimpse into the man behind the music, and it makes his connection to Detroit even more powerful, you know? Like this guy, he's traveled the world, shared his music with millions, but he always seems to come back to those roots.
It's like that saying, you can take the boy out of location, but...
But he can't take location out of the boy.
Exactly. And he even talks about how Detroit's industrial landscape, like the grit, the resilience, it's all there in his music.
It's like the city itself is part of his creative DNA.
Right. And those early warehouse parties in Detroit, he talks about the energy, the sense of community, like it still fuels his work today.
Wow. That's powerful. It's like those experiences stay with you.
They shape you, even as you evolve.
It's a good reminder that music doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's a product of its environment, of the stories it carries.
Absolutely. And speaking of stories,
Yeah.
this interview, man, I thought we were just going to geek out about techno,
Yeah.
but this has been so much more.
I know, right? Like, we've covered everything from, like, the ups and downs of touring to, like, AI DJs.
It's like a masterclass in creativity. We've gone deep into the challenges of, like, staying true to your vision.
The importance of embracing discomfort, the future of music.
It's really made me rethink what it means to be a musician, an artist.
Me too. Like, I'm definitely going to be listening to his work differently after this. More attentively. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mark of a true artist, right? Someone who not only moves you, but makes you think.
Yes. Jeff Mills,
Mhm.
musician, innovator, sonic philosopher. I love that. He's not just making music, he's starting a conversation.
And he's inviting us all to participate.
Exactly. So, to everyone listening, the next time you hear a techno track, any track really, think about the story behind the sound. Who knows, maybe it'll inspire you to start a revolution of your own.
You're here.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. Until next time.